So this is your first feature film as a director. What was it like having that as such a top secretive project as this one?
It was brutal. It was brutal because I leading up to making a movie, I've been a fan of them and a movie geek my entire life, and I love talking about movies. And here I am finally making one, and I can't say anything to all of my friends. It was brutal. But now they get to watch the movie and be surprised by it, which is going to be super rewarding when it finally happens. So, yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, totally.
And this movie has had so many different code names and changed during the process of the writing.
Mm-hmm.
When did it eventually evolve into a Cloverfield relative?
Actually, frankly, when I read it, it already was, the Bad Robot acquired a spec script called The Cellar, and then JJ and his producers and Damien Chazelle developed it into this thing that would fit into the Cloververse. And so when I read it, it already was very similar to the movie that you see today. We didn't quite have a title for it, and eventually JJ honed in on, I was like, what if we called it 10 Cloverfield Lane? And it was like, awesome, because even that title to me is evocative of Twilight Zone, and this movie is very much a giant episode of Twilight Zone, so.
And why do you think it was essential that it's a relative of Cloverfield and not just a film existing on its own?
Well, I think now, this Cloverfield could be a signal to the audience, not only of a certain tone and a certain genre, but also it's now a platform for these original stories to be told. I think the original Cloverfield is one of the most unique movies and a really cool way into a very familiar genre. And we also are a very unique way into a very familiar genre. And going forward in success, should we be given it, I'm sure JJ would be stoked to make more really cool original movies in this vein.
And in your opinion, would you say that the events in this film exist within the same universe as the events of Cloverfield?
Yeah, it's certainly not the same timeline,
Okay.
but I think now we may see more movies unfolding and connecting in ways that are unexpected. So, yeah.
Are there any Easter eggs or kind of clues in this movie connecting the two movies?
Well, there's certainly some JJ staples. There's a Slusho nod, and there's a Kelvin gas station, and there are, I shouldn't say so that people have a chance to see, but there are, especially if you've been playing the ARG, the alternative reality game surrounding this movie that was also surrounding the first movie, there's a couple really specific details that involve Howard's character that are evoked in the ARG and stuff. Yeah.
And the original film is really well known for its shaky handheld camera aesthetic.
Right.
But there's a lot less of that in this movie.
Yeah.
What was your approach to kind of creating the tension within the bunker?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first movie was had this really unique identity. It was a found footage movie, and this movie does not have that identity. It's a more traditional movie. But what I loved about that movie was it really felt like an experience. And I really wanted this movie to also feel like an experience. And I frankly took a lot of inspiration from video games. There's a lot of first-person video games where there's a shorthand to make you feel like you are in the protagonist's shoes. But there's been so many smartly designed third-person video games. I'm thinking of the Uncharted's or Last of Us. And you, as the player, also feel like you are in the protagonist's shoes, even though you're looking at them rather than being them. And I thought I could do the same thing with this movie. And there's a lot of stuff in the sound design and in the camera work in terms of when we are still, when we are locked off, and it almost feels like we're in a diorama looking at the people moving through it. And then there's times when we are with our characters, and the handheld camera work and the really kinetic, exciting camera movements amplify everything. And it's all about that push-pull and managing that friction. So, I hope that this movie feels as subjective as the original Cloverfield, even though it's not done in the same style.
And how would you envision the future of the Cloverfield universe if there were to be a sequel or a continuation?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, certainly this movie could have its own sequel. that would be rad, but certainly I think it would be fantastic for there to be another Cloverfield movie that would be its own original story. But that is not up to me. That is up to my boss, and he's pretty smart with all this stuff, so I certainly trust him.
Doesn't seem to be